Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm very excited to bring you a review for the new Transformers War for Cybertron Trilogy, Behold Galvatron, Unicron Companion Pack. This pack is a special release that's exclusive to Hasbro and other, fan-based collector sites. And it's kind of a select style offering, which includes a recolor of the Kingdom Galvatron mold, this time done up in partly translucent plastic and special paint apps to recreate the iconic scene from Transformers the movie where Megatron gets reformatted into Galvatron. So it's during that process before Galvatron's actual exterior textures, kind of scan onto him there. And the reason this is called a Unicron Companion Pack is it also includes some extra accessories in the form of tiny ships and little micro slug figures of other Transformers characters that are compatible with the little head display stand for the HasLab Unicron toy. So think of it kind of like a plastic DLC. That's really the best way to look at it, is you get some more little microfigs to, pair up with a Unicron, and then you also get a reformatting Galvatron who you can put in scenes with the giant planet eater and recreate some really cool moments from the '86 movie. So, if you've seen my reviews before, you know this goes. We're going to take a look at Galvatron's packaging. Then we'll open it up. We'll do kind of a little unboxing thing for this packaging, see what's inside. We'll go ahead and get a look at the instructions, and then we'll see Galvatron himself in both his cannon and robot modes. Naturally, I'll be doing plenty of group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So Galvatron comes in a box very similar to your Selects packaging, but it's done up with exclusive print that shows, a cartoon render of Galvatron here. You get Unicron in the background. Here, you get what appears to be a picture of Cybertron, and then a bunch of Transformers figures floating around. And I believe this print right here was actually taken off of the giant Unicron box that the HasLab toy came in. So that's pretty cool. A little bit of synergy there. This just kind of wraps around for Galvatron's, shoulder, and I'm not sure what that is. What is that? I can't really tell. Actually, it's not even a wraparound. It's just his arm. It's this part of the drawing. That's weird. I don't know why they did that. Just some stars here. Very similar to Unicron. This part actually has a wraparound of this image. There we go. And then on this front face, we have our select style little sticker label thing. So, leader class, it is still considered leader even though it includes some extra stuff. It's called Behold Galvatron, Unicron Companion Pack. So overall, pretty nice packaging. It does very much resemble the box that Unicron came in, which makes sense because it is, kind of a little expansion to that whole set. Okay, I've gone ahead and cut our label so we can open this up and see what it looks like on the inside. Here we go. Oh, this is nice. Dig that. So we get this really nice line art render of Galvatron, which I think is basically the same drawing that's on the front of the box, but without the shading, or I guess with less shading. You get that kind of grid background going on from the scene from Transformers the movie. You can see here, Unicron's planet ring, which is lifted directly from his box. Get your War for Cybertron logo. You get the Quintesson ship flying around in space, and then some unnamed planet right there. Alright, so looking inside, here is Galvatron himself. So he's got these new colors here, which is pretty cool. He's got his own little cardboard insert, sorry. Very nice looking, and of course we'll get a better look at him here in a moment. The smaller box is very similar to those accessory packs that we got with, was it Tricranius and the Centurion drone? Where this is where all the little bits and pieces are contained. Had to cut the tape there. Alright, so this just opens on a little flap here. Got some paper. That's just a spacer. That's just a spacer. There's nothing else in there. Huh, okay. Alright, now let's open this up and see what we have. There's Galvatron's cannon. Very cool. His two guns that look like his ship, the Revenge. Keep going. Oh, it's just all rolled up here. Alright, so we get, here's his matrix and chain accessory. we get our 3 ships. You get the Revenge, like actually the Revenge, in scale with the Autobot shuttle that came with Unicron. We get our Quintesson little corkscrew-like ship here. And then we get our Junkion ship as well. So that's very cool. Okay, boy, there are a lot of these slug figures. It's going to take a while to... Alright, so this is Swoop in his beast mode. Along with Grimlock. He's got some real bad mold flash. Jeez. Have to do something about that. This is Slag. Not Slug, it's Slag. Snarl. Well, looks like no Sludge. That's a shame. Let's see. This is Ultra Magnus. This is Scourge. This appears to be Starscream, though it could technically be any Seeker. RC. Wow, that is tiny. That is fragile. Look at those tiny legs. We'll be very careful with that one. Alright, this appears to be Cup. A Conehead. So it looks like they just give you one standard Seeker and one Conehead, and you can just kind of decide which one's which. This appears to be Perceptor, right there. This is Megatron. This is Cyclonus. And lastly, Soundwave. So, just really filling out a good portion of the 86 movie cast there, giving you more than just your 3 figures which have been released so far, which included Galvatron, Rodimus Prime, and Optimus Prime. So get a little bit more. Now, these are unfortunately all just done up in gray without any kind of paint on them, so very similar to the little Optimus that came with your Centurion drone pack. All right, and then we get the instructions, and these are very beautifully printed. Look at that. So they're done on like a grayscale, but then they also have this kind of light blue blended in, and it creates a really nice image. I like this. Looks very premium. So you get an awesome render of Galvatron on the front. Oh, cool, look, we get a little breakdown of the little slug characters. So, all right, so the Conehead is apparently Dirge. That's interesting. I guess if you really pay attention to the details yet, it is Dirge. And then the other Seeker is Starscream, though technically it could be any of them. All right, this shows you how to mount Galvatron's accessories and all that, how to have him wield them. And then we get the transformation from robot to cannon mode. That just takes up the rest of the back, too. So nothing new as far as his transformation. Just new colors here. So, yeah, very nice looking. Wow, I really dig the colors on this. I wouldn't mind them just making this like the new colors for the instructions. Though the legacy colors are pretty nice, too. Okay, so a lot to unpack there. Yeah, it ran a lot longer than I thought it would for this portion because there's a lot going on. All right, before we get into Galvatron proper, I want to get a look at our little minifigures and how they interact with the display stand that came with our Unicron. Now, if you guys want to see my Unicron review, I'm going to be attaching a card here to the video. I'll be honest, though, not my favorite work. Like, I'm actually very much ashamed with how that review came out for a few reasons. Not least of all is the fact that I end up body blocking the camera for like 80% of the transformation, so... Not super proud of it, but if you still want to get a good look at Unicron, hear my thoughts on it, you know, check that out. It is a very, very awesome toy. All right, so here's our display stand. You got Unicron's head here, and you have the Autobot shuttle that comes with it. You also have the Galvatron and Rodimus Prime that came with Unicron. This is actually the little Optimus Prime that came with the Centurion drone accessory pack. Now, what's interesting is, you know, he's cast in all gray too, and I'm not sure how well you can tell, but the shade of gray is actually a fair bit different than that's you know, makes up these new figures here. So, not a huge deal. I mean, the colors, I mean, they're all, you know, off color anyway. But we can see here that we only have one little mini flight stand for the ships. And if I were going to say that there's any kind of flaw or anything missing with this little companion pack, it's the fact that it didn't include at least 2 additional stands for our ships here, because you have 3 spots total, here, here, here. And if they really wanted to be awesome and give us a way to have all 4 ships on there at once, they could have had like a little adapter piece that like plugs on right here and just gives you like another little 5mm port. Would have been nice to be able to put them all on the same stand like that. So to me, I think that's maybe the biggest downfall of this whole pack, the fact that, you know, you get all these new ships, but you have nowhere to put them. Like, even if you take this off, you can only display one at a time, so I think that's a big shame. As far as our small slug figures, there are a total of 15 slots on the stand to house them. You got 5 on each side and then 5 on the front here, which means that between these 3 that come from elsewhere and then all the ones that come here, you're going to be able to display all but 2 of all these figures. So it's a lot better than the ships, because you at least get to display most of your guys, but it does mean you have to triage a little bit and decide which 2 characters don't get to be on the stand. Now, speaking as a collector, as somebody who, you know, likes to keep their stuff nice and unbroken, I'm going to say one that you'll probably, unfortunately, want to bench is RC here, because those tiny, tiny little legs, like, there's no way you're going to be able to plug her in and pull her out and stuff and not risk snapping those legs. They are super thin. I'm honestly surprised they cast it that way. So personally, if you were to follow my recommendation, I would say RC probably best left off, and then, you know, one other figure if you're choosing. Maybe Cup, he's got some pretty scrawny legs too. Just, you know, purely from a toy preservation standpoint. If you really want RC on there, you know, go for it. I just think there's a very high possibility of, you know, opening yourself up for some heartbreak there, so be aware of that. Okay, here's one example of what your setup could look like. You see I've got all the little slots filled here for the characters. I did end up leaving off RC and Cup. As much as I hate to do that because they are, you know, main movie characters and probably deserve a spot on here more than some others, I'm just trying to be pragmatic and preserve my figures. If you want to risk putting them on there, feel free. I gotta warn you, a lot of these new slug figures have a really hard time fitting into these slots. Megatron was especially bad. I had to really fight to get him to plug in there. Their bases seem to be just a little bit too wide. So be aware of that. It can take a good amount of force to get them on there, and you gotta be really smart about where you're applying the force and making sure you're not putting a lot of stress on the legs and stuff. Personally, I actually use the back end of like a pair of tweezers to, you know, help kind of push the quarters down in there. So while, you know, having all these figures on here is really cool and finally, you know, fully utilized as a stand, just be aware it's not a fun process. I had some choice words while I was, you know, putting this together, and things kept popping off, and it's going to take some patience, just letting you know. You can also see I've gone and put the Revenge on here because, you know, unfortunately you can only have one ship, and I figure I might as well go with the one that most fits the theme of this whole companion pack. So there you go. This is, you know, one potential arrangement you can have with all of your new figures. Okay, now we get to see Galvatron in his cannon mode. And there's a lot of interesting detail to look at here. Obviously, we have all this clear purple plastic, which looks very nice. And then you have this really nice, intricate line work. Just goes all around his molded details. So this seems to represent the, you know, part of the reformatting sequence, like kind of toward the end, like after the grid patterns fade away right before he gets like his full texture here. Looks really cool overall. I really like the way this came out. Looks even better in hand than it does on the packaging. You can see he's got the matrix, which is on a solid purple chain with a clear purple matrix. And, you know, canonically it doesn't make any sense to have it at this point in the movie, but it's part of the mold, so why not include it, you know? You get his little Revenge type guns or rail guns molded in your clear purple. And perhaps most interestingly, his cannon is now pink, which is pretty cool. It's pretty interesting because all the other Galvatron toys, you know, they have an orange cannon. And they could have just made this thing purple like the rest of him, which, you know, on one hand probably would have made it look closer to how it probably should appear in the movie, right? He was all purple. But it does make it, you know, stand out against all the purple while still being kind of in that same hue, you know what I mean? So he doesn't all just blend into like one just big purpley mess. So I like it. I think the pink cannon's a really nice touch. Kind of gives you that pink lemonade vibe. Okay, and here's our comparison with the other two versions of Galvatron. Your standard Kingdom one, which is based off his cartoon appearance. And then our Generation Selects Galvatron, who's based off of the Generation 1 toy, and a little bit his comic appearance. And fun fact, I like this guy so much, he actually made my pick for like top leader class of last year, so you can tell I'm quite fond of it. But all three of these are really solid efforts. My biggest issue with the standard Galvatron is the alt mode, just the way that the colors work for him, the way he transforms, makes him look a little kibbly and more like a Bay former than a G1 character. These two rectify that with better color placement, in my opinion. So I think he's obviously going to be the most coherent because he's just purple. Like, purple matches purple, you know? And then I think our toy-based or comics-based one just ends up working a little bit better with how everything's laid out. Looks more coherent, less, you know, just kind of everything tossed together in random places. But all three of these are solid efforts. And, you know, talking about the cannons here, mention how this one's pink, and these are both orange, but they're a little bit different. This is like a darker orange, more of an amber color, and it's got some like spray paint apps along the sides here. And then our toy-based one, just like the original G1 toy, is a bright orange with a little bit of glitter and the sparkliness mixed in. So, you know, very 80s sci-fi. So yeah, whether you prefer, you know, this color scheme, that one, they all have a really nice, really solid looking alt mode. All right, now here we get to see Galvatron's very awesome looking robot mode, and this is where those painted panel lines really start to shine. He does at first glance look like he jumped right off of an art cell from the movie, and really the effect is just done very, very well. Now, of course, the fact that he does have some solid purple on him does kind of break the illusion of, you know, what they're going for, but the alternative is to be using clear plastic in a lot of, you know, structurally important and load-bearing parts, which is not what you want. May look more complete, but you're opening yourself up for heartbreak. And what's actually really interesting is in the recent Fan First Friday that Hasbro did for the Transformers brand, they actually acknowledge a lot of the pushback for the use of translucent parts and actually asked people, you know, to talk about and discuss in forums as far as, you know, what they prefer. Do they like the clear plastic? Do they not like it? Or do they prefer certain, you know, prefer it in a certain way? Now, me personally, I'm not opposed to clear plastic at all, but I think they just have to be smart about how they apply it. You never really want to use it for parts that, you know, get a lot of stress put on them, because that's how you get breakage. I know one of the things they're debating is whether or not to keep going with clear windshields. Now, you can do clear windshields. The problem is, as a cost-cutting measure, they mold the windshield and then like the roof and top sections of the car or the doors or whatever out of that same clear plastic and then paint over it. Now, not only does that create a challenge for them when it comes to painting, which is something Mark actually pointed out, that he really hates trying to color match, you know, with paint on clear plastic versus the, you know, solid plastics. He hates doing that, so he wouldn't mind seeing that go away. But, you know, it also creates those structural issues when you get pins running through them, they're on hinges, whatever, or if they have tabs, they have to tab into stuff. Very scary stuff. When you look at toys like Trax, you know, you're just like, oh boy, like, am I going to break him this time when I transform him? Now, the solution, it's very simple from, you know, structural standpoint. You just have layered plastic, right? You have a frame, right? Let's say the car roof, and all the parts that actually make up the body of the car are the solid plastic, and then you have clear plastic panels that just, you know, press in there and lock in there to be the windows. They did something very similar for like the Siege Optimus Prime toy. However, that's more expensive to manufacture, and I think that's the whole reason they don't do that often. They only do it when the budget allows for it, like on the Optimus Prime toy. So really, it's kind of a catch-22, because there's the profit interest of Hasbro as the company that, you know, they don't want to spend a lot of money with, like, you know, multi-panel plastic parts that, you know, look awesome but cost more to manufacture. And then you have the consumer side of things where people are starting to not want to buy certain toys because they're afraid it's going to break, and, you know, or they think it doesn't look very good. Now, one potential solution is to just stop using it altogether, which is something they experimented with the buzzworthy releases of Cliffjumper and Cup that are kind of popping up here and there. And while I think that can look good in some facets, overall, I don't think it's as great of an approach. I think the clear plastic windshields really do help make the vehicles look more premium and more nice. So I don't know what the solution is. I know what I want to see, but I don't think it's realistic as far as what, you know, the bean counters at Hasbro are going to allow in the budget. So, all right, sorry. I know that was a bit out in the weeds. I mean, it's related, but it is a little off topic. So let's reel me back in with my scatterbrain I got going on. All right, so yeah, boom, Galvatron. Very awesome looking. And you can see here that you can store his railgun pieces on his back still. And contrary to the instructions, you actually want to store them via this lower slot, not the ones that you use for the cannon mode, because otherwise they stick way up. And that's not how they're meant to be. They're meant to be down here, so they kind of hide away. But you can take these. He can wield them individually if you want. Then it looks weird because it looks like he's just wielding spaceships in his hands. So typically you combine them into one big railgun, put it in his hand. It's a little loose. All right, there we go. So now he's really complete looking. And again, looks phenomenal. If you want to see what it looks like without the Matrix, there it is. It's got this really nice white Decepticon symbol right on the chest. Speaking of white, his white eyes against the dark face look really cool. Really helps sell that very Tron-like look. So overall, I think this is a great, great figure. Like, even without all the added stuff, all the, the Unicron bonus stuff, he's just great as a standalone. And, the early pictures, I wasn't really feeling it, but getting him in hand and under some bright lights, I really love the way he came out. It looks absolutely gorgeous. All right, here's our robot comparison with the other Galvatrons. You can see I like to configure my selects one a little bit differently, move his arm cannon around, mess with the shoulder pylons, just to make him look a little more reminiscent of the old toy. That's about the closest to fan moding I usually go. But you can see all three of these, they all have something to bring to the table. Again, you have your cartoon colors Galvatron, your toy or comic colors, and then you have him from one specific scene of the movie. So he's definitely more niche than the other two, because he represents like a very brief moment in Galvatron's, lifespan there. But it is something that is very specific and very cool and sets itself apart very much from the other two. One thing that's interesting I'm noticing is that his solid purples actually appear to be very similar to, if not identical to, the Kingdom of Galvatrons. You can see here, like on the upper arms there, the crown. I think it might be the same plastic color, but it's also in different places a lot of the time, like on the upper legs. So it doesn't feel very samey or anything, and it works, right? It is where it's supposed to be, at least as far as maintaining the toy's structure. So I like it, and it's something that's probably not immediately noticeable to everybody. So yeah, they're all doing their own thing. Different colored accessories, different colored matrices. They're all really unique, and I think they all have, a nice specific place in somebody's collection. It's not like something with like the original Studio Series Bumblebee and then the Clunker Bumblebee, which was like the same toy with some rust spots on it. That, to me, feels very cash grabby. It really feels like, okay, you gave it like some slightly different paint apps and released the same toy and you want me to buy it again. Like, that really turned me away. I never bought the Clunker one because I thought it was just far too samey. These three, however, are also distinct and cool in their own right. I have no problem owning all three of them. I'm very happy with the way they all came out. Now here's a shot I've been looking forward to. Utilizing our Kingdom Galvatron as well as our RED Megatrons, both the original and the newly released reformatting Megatron. You'll notice I haven't finished the review for yet, but it's in the works like most things. You can really just recreate this nice little transition from the old Decepticon leader to the new. Now, of course, the scaling's kind of whacked out because the RED toys, they're about deluxe size. They're not quite the Voyager size that you'd expect a character like Megatron to be, so scale's kind of out the window there. And he is a little bit dwarfed by, Galvatron here. But the effect's still pretty nice. Plus, if the scale thing's an issue, there is supposedly a G1 Galvatron in the works from RED, so I would not be shocked if that toy eventually got the same little reformatting treatment that this one did. So then you can really, scale them together. But, scale aside, it does look pretty cool. You definitely got this nice little transition going forward here. You can see I've done my best approximation of Galvatron's little intro stance from the movie. At least, the best that he can do with his current posability. So yeah, I imagine you're going to see a lot of similar shots to this on the internet as people play with their Galvatron, their RED, reformatting Megatron. It's just kind of inevitable. But I had to do it because I want to see it for myself. And I gotta say, the results are pretty good. I like it. I like the way it turned out. And this completes our look at the new Behold Galvatron Unicron Companion Pack. I will say I very much like this thing. I think as niche as it is, it's just so cool that it'd be hard to pass up, even though I already own, 2 other versions of Galvatron. The extras it comes with, they are very cool. Again, I'm very disappointed that they didn't give us more of those little flight stands, because why give us all these ships if we can't display, even half of them? I think that's a shame. It's a little bit of a shame that you can't get all of the figures on there, but you come close enough, honestly. And I'm sure, I don't know if they had planned exactly how many figures they were going to have here before they made this whole thing. So, yeah, I think overall, probably a really good deal, at least considering, the base Galvatron. If you didn't think the regular Galvatron's a good deal, which I still don't think it's $50 worth of toy by itself, maybe, somewhere between Voyager and Leader. But just going off of, what we already got, it's only a few bucks more to get all the extras. Your 3 extra ships, your tons of extra slug figures, and a really nice paint job. So I think, overall, it's well worth the purchase. It's currently sold out, I think, at least on Pulse, so it may be a little hard to get. Seems to be selling better than the Selects one, which is a travesty in my opinion. But if you can track one down, I think it's worth a pickup, especially if you already have Unicron. If you don't have Unicron, the ships and slug figures may feel a bit peripheral and not really necessary. But again, it's only a couple bucks extra to get those, so if you just want to kind of ignore that, or maybe sell that to somebody who just wants those figures for their Unicron, you can get that, that money back and probably then some. So I think he's very much a worthwhile pickup. Now, something I forgot to mention earlier, this is the 3rd Galvatron that we've gotten from this mold, and there's possibly maybe a 4th version coming, because we know that there's going to be a legacy repack of Galvatron, which was billed as just being like a repack of his regular Kingdom toy. However, some fans have noticed that in the CGI renders for the toy, all that little battle damage that was kind of oddly included on the Kingdom Galvatron seems to be gone from those renders. That doesn't guarantee that the finished product will, be lacking those extra paint apps, but it's a pretty strong hint. So there may actually be kind of a 4th version coming out, which I don't know if I'll pick that up, because again, that's kind of like the Clunker Bumblebee situation. Like, am I really gonna buy the same toy again for some slight difference in the paint apps? In this case, it seems like just purely an absence of paint apps, so it's not like they're even like you're getting different ones. You're getting a little bit less value there. We'll see how that goes. Maybe it's a nothing burger, maybe it'll end up being exactly the same as Kingdom, but something to keep your eyes on. But back to this guy, fully recommend him. If you can track one down with or without the accessories, I think he's a great purchase, and I think you'll have a lot of fun with him. He plays very well, tolerances are great, and for all the clear plastic, they're all put in places that aren't, terribly concerning when you're transforming him. So go out there and pick this guy up if you can. Of course, that is just my take on Galvatron, so now I want to know what you all think of this set. Do you find it to be worthwhile? Is it something you're interested in? Do you think it's really, really cool? Or do you not like it? Maybe because it's too niche, or you just don't need another Galvatron, or maybe you think it's too expensive. Any and all feedback's always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at the brand new Transformers War for Cybertron Trilogy Behold Galvatron Unicron Companion Pack. And with all that said, I will see you next time.